Hello again. I dare say that older viewers will remember periods of life in Britain during which nothing much seemed to happen for years at a time. Life trundled on in a fairly peaceful way, with the same Prime Minister and government for years at a time and nothing remarkable occurring. Margaret Thatcher for 11 years, followed by John Major for 7 years, and then Tony Blair for 10 years. Imagine that, just 3 prime ministers in 28 years. In the last 6 years, we have had 5 different prime ministers. The result of this is to make our political situation seem fragile and in a constant state of flux. Then too, there always seems to be some special circumstance which prevents life from getting back to normal. The pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the asylum seeker crisis, the cost of living crisis, price of gas and electricity. It all blurs into one continuous state of emergency where we feel that there is always a new disaster looming just around the corner. I do not say that this has been deliberately contrived or engineered, but it has certainly worked to the advantage of some people in power. We've become fearful and anxious, prepared to do anything that politicians suggest, if only this will make our lives safer and restore normal life. There was a time when large-scale demonstrations and protest marches would be taking place to try and stop the government undertaking this action or that, but nobody seems to have the energy for such things today. Remember the poll tax riots? You can't imagine people today having the strength of feeling to protest so fiercely about what the government is up to. Instead, we grumble, but end up towing the party line. The government tells us that we mustn't have sex with people who don't live in our homes, and that we are not to invite people to Christmas dinner, and we agree without question. We are told that Ukraine is a heroic little country, and we must all support them. And at once, everybody starts waving blue and yellow flags. By having a series of crises, one after the other in quick succession, we are always kept off balance and never quite feel relaxed and never really have time to stop and ask ourselves important questions about the government and how much we actually need it or want it. There is always the feeling of some menace hanging over us, and even though many people claim to mistrust and dislike politicians, it is to them that we turn, and we expect them to rescue us from the terrible dangers we face. This is, of course, a very old trick, and Mencken, the American political writer, summed up the case neatly when he wrote that the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by an endless series of hobgoblins, most of them imaginary. This then is precisely what is happening now. We are the people, and we are being threatened with an endless series of hobgoblins. This is the permacrisis, and it shows no sign of abating any time soon.